writing is not easy at the best of times, and even more so when it comes to writing a really good literature review. Now, unlike a lot of other writing you may have done in the past, there are certain important aspects that you need to focus on, in addition to the normal grammar and spelling when you come to your literature review. And we call these the 4 C's, and they are ensuring that your literature review is comprehensive, coherent, critical, and captivating. So let's start with comprehensive. Not only do you need to read comprehensively, you also need to write comprehensively. A concept matrix is a really useful tool when reading literature. It's made up of a list of references that the literature covers, which are the rows, and they are mapped against key research concepts, which are the columns, derived from your research questions and objectives. And the concept matrix can be used to make sure that you're not relying too much on just a few literature sources, or maybe missing literature that's supporting key concepts. And so this serves as the platform for you to be able to write a comprehensive literature review. Now, it is important that your literature review provides a well-structured, comprehensive coverage of the topic area. So that's our first C. Make sure it's comprehensive. The second C is coherent. The next challenge is deciding how to present all this content in a clear way. It's all very well having this pile of so-called bricks with which you want to build, but only when they are arranged into a building do they enable someone to see your intention. And as such, it's vital that the content you have identified is arranged in a way that will both make sense and clearly communicate your intention. Just like there are many ways in which the bricks can be arranged to create a building, so too, there are many ways in which you can arrange your literature review to create your building. There are 4 main ways to arrange your literature review so that it has a coherent structure and a logical flow. The first way you can do it is what's called the chronological approach. Now, in this approach, literature is arranged in such a way that it reflects the development of the topic and how the topic has changed and developed over time. So typically what happens is older references are presented first, progressing towards the latest research near the end of your literature review. This approach is appropriate if you're wanting to show how the development of the field has progressed, and then possibly conclude with the current situation and identify the gap that now needs to be addressed. The second way in which you can arrange your literature is what's called the seminal organization. Now, all fields of research are defined by seminal works. These are research papers that either result in totally new directions and insights, or papers that provide a guiding theoretical framework. Now, the seminal structuring approach would see you discuss key theories or key papers and how other researchers have applied and extended or possibly even disagreed with those research papers and those theories. The third way to structure your literature review is a thematic organization. And this type of structure is based around discussing various key themes that the research is exploring. These themes can normally be identified from your research question and your objectives. For example, in a study that seeks to answer the question, what is the impact of residential dogs on the amount of medication needed by people with Alzheimer's disease living in care homes? The literature could be arranged around themes such as Alzheimer's disease, Alzheimer's treatments, alternative medicine, care homes, etc. So you start to identify what the themes are. The fourth way of arranging your literature is what's called the inverted pyramid organization. And this is one of the most popular ways of arranging a literature review. It's around a pyramid structure where it starts broad and gets narrow. And this approach begins with the literature from a broad perspective and moving as you continue down towards the literature that's more focused on your research topic. And this approach is particularly useful in studies that bridge multiple areas. Consider, for example, a research question. How does online learning impact student motivation? Now, this research question is likely to cover literature from areas such as education, psychology, information technology, etc. And as such, you might begin by reviewing literature around education and motivation theory. And then look more specifically at education technology and learning with technology. And then finally, move towards literature that deals specifically with performance and motivation within online learning. Whichever approach is used, a coherent structure should make it clear to the reader how the literature is being reviewed and how it all ultimately leads to the identification of the research gap being addressed. And the best way to ensure that your reader will understand your structuring is tell them. You do this by signaling in the introduction section how you will be approaching the literature review. So here's an example. Right at the start, in your introduction, you say something like, this chapter begins by reviewing the literature on key education theories and how they impact student learning. And this is followed by a review of research around the application of educational technology and how technology impacts learning. And finally, the chapter focuses specifically on current research on the use of online learning, and in particular, studies around motivation and performance. So you've made it really clear how you're going to do it, and the structure is clear in the mind of the reader. The third of our C's to write a good literature review is critical. Critical writing. The purpose of a literature review is not to summarize, but to show you are engaging with the literature. And this is partly done by arranging the literature in a coherent way that shows a progression of your thinking and of an argument. However, it is also linked to your ability to critically engage with the literature. Just because something is published does not mean it's the final word on the topic. As such, don't simply summarize the literature, but show how the literature aligns or does not align with other studies. Discuss issues and strengths and the methodologies that others have adopted. Highlight the themes identified in the literature and the debates that the literature is contributing to. You have to apply your mind to be critical, which brings us to the fourth element, captivating. Rejection rates of papers that have been submitted to various top-tier journals vary from 80 to 85%, according to CADICAR 2018. That's crazy high. But why am I telling you this? Quite simply, I wanted to get your attention. While having all the necessary content, comprehensive, and arranging it in an understandable way, coherent, and showing your thinking, critical, is all important, there's still one other vital element, a captivating storyline. This is a thread that holds everything else together. The literature review is a progressive narrative where each literature source connects with and develops on the one before. And all of this literature leads to the culmination point, the gap in the literature that your research is seeking to address. This is your storyline, and you need to make it clear. Just because this is academic writing does not mean it can't be captivating. And here are some simple tips to how to make your literature review more captivating. Start with something interesting and astounding to grab attention early on. This could be a powerful, provocative quote or a startling statistic. Keep the reader informed of where they are and where they're headed next. And always indicate at the start of a section what will be covered in the section, and at the end of the section, what's coming up next. Make use of clear headers so the reader can understand the story, the map, the structure. And end the literature review with the culmination of your story. This is the research gap, your research question that you have identified, and the reason why your research is needed. And this sets you up to write the next chapter, the research methodology, which outlines how you will answer the question that you have left the reader with. Try and find a quote from the literature that underscores why this research gap is so important. And then finally conclude with what next. Those are the 4 C's to ensure you produce a cracking literature review. Make sure your literature review is comprehensive, coherent, critical, and captivating.